Genesis chapter 20. Genesis chapter 20. Again, this lesson goes through chapter 23, and all through these chapters, deal with certain tests of faith for Abraham and Sarah. That's what we're going to be spending the next couple of weeks looking at. We see Abraham's faith lapse a little bit. He makes some wrong decisions because of being worried about a variety of things. We then see him passing essentially the test of faith and the reward that God gave him in the midst of that as well. As we get over into chapter 21, 22, we see some more testing of Abraham's faith. So we see lots and lots of tests here for Abraham, and look at the topic here mainly of faith and the tests that the Lord gives us as well, the patterns, and the rewards of our faithfulness to those who test as well. Now, it's important as we look at this, and it's not that we don't know, but it's a good reminder for us that we always will be having the test of our faith. It's the way in which God allows us to mature in our faith in Him. And sometimes we fail those tests, and He's got to take us to the woodshed a little bit to kind of correct us and fix some of the problems. But as long as we as Christians keep the mindset that the tough times in life are just ways for us to grow closer to God. Endeavor through those, we'll grow through the test, and when we can get to a point, we mentioned a couple times, when we can get to a point to where we're thankful for the test, right? That's not always easy to do. But if we can get to a point where we're thankful for the difficult times, it's easy to be thankful for good times. If we can get to where we're thankful for difficult times and understanding it's all part of just the maturation process of our faith, then we'll see growth in leaps and bounds in our faith in God. And that's kind of something we'll kind of mention. I'll mention a lot over the next couple of weeks because nobody will know about me. You all can all test the fact that it's not easy to be tested a lot of time, and it's not always easy to be thankful for those tests as well. But that's just kind of part of the whole process here. All part of the process that God kind of has for us. So we see from chapter 20, first of all, the test, one of the tests of Abraham and how his faith kind of lapses. But before we do that, pop quiz. Here we go. What food items did Abraham say he would bring to the three men who visited his camp in chapter 18? What food item did Abraham say he would bring the three men who visited his camp in chapter 18?
Water. Is that one? Unleavened bread with meat.
Morsel of bread. Verse 5, chapter 18 specifically says a morsel of bread. Okay? Second question. What was the lowest number that Abraham gave in his appeal to God to spare the city of Sodom? What was the lowest number of righteous people that Abraham gave in his appeal to God to save the city of Sodom? 10. Good. 10. Third question. We've got 5 of them. What did the future sons-in-law do when Lot told them that they needed to leave Sodom? What did the future sons-in-law do when Lot told them they needed to get out of Sodom? It's chapter 19. Yeah, they laughed at him, right? They laughed at him. Good. What was the name of the city in which Lot fled to after he left Sodom? What was the name of the city that Lot fled to? Zor. Yeah, Zor. Correct. And what were the names of the sons that were born to Lot by his daughters? What were the names of the sons born to Lot by his daughters? Moab was one of them. You can pull the other one. Yeah, Ben-Ami, good. Okay, Ben-Ami, good. So, pop quiz, right? Sometimes those happen. And most of the time, we don't like pop quizzes, right? We don't like them, don't expect them. And my kids don't like it when I throw them to school. Because we would much rather be prepared for the quiz, right? We'd much rather know the quiz is coming, that way we can look over the stuff, or whatever the case may be, so we're more prepared. What kind of pop quizzes do you think God brings our way? What kind of pop quizzes does God bring our way? Temptations.
Unexpected things that come up.
Unexpected things that come up. And all of those pop quizzes are meant to do what? Test your faith. Right? All those things are meant to test your faith. Excellent. And how might you prepare for a test of your faith? If you knew, right, that something was, God was, 2 weeks, God says, we're going to go and we're going to test your faith in this way. Exactly. You're going to pray. You're going to go through instances where you know other people in scriptures had the same kind of test, see how they dealt with it, how they handled it. Exactly. We'll be able to kind of go in and prepare, which would be good, it'd be very helpful. That's not what happens most of the time. Abraham went through tests as well, as we're going to see. And Abraham, even though, again, one of the dudes of faith, right, he's in the Hall of Fame, he didn't always pass everything, as we're going to kind of see early on here. But the ones that he did pass helps us, as we look at those things, kind of learn some very important lessons. All right, so Abraham, God, had made another appearance here to Abraham with the purpose of telling him that he and Sarah, of course, are going to have a son. Sarah heard the conversation in the story. She laughed at it, and she didn't deny the laughter, and showing again her lack of faith. Now, we move into chapter 20, and we're going to continue to kind of see some of the lack of faith of both she and Abraham as they make a trip into enemy territory or foreign lands or occupied territory. Okay? So let's go to chapter number 20, and let's read down through verse 7 to start off with. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned into Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? So he said not unto me, she is my sister. And she even herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart, in the innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, and I also withheld thee from sinning against thee. Therefore suffer I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live, and thou restore her not. Know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. So Abraham here decides to leave where he's at, leave Mamre, that's where he's living right now, and head towards Gerar. Now, Gerar is the capital city of the Philistines. Okay, so it's a pretty big place and pretty powerful place. It's 10 miles south of Gaza. Okay, and as he is moving there and heading down towards Gerar, he commits the same sin, right, that he did 20 years previously. Okay, and he told Abimelech, of course, the king, that Sarah was what? Sarah was his sister. Okay, so we know that he did that 20 years ago with Pharaoh, and kind of some of the stuff that happened afterwards. And Abraham follows into the same sin trap as again. Now, we got to think about Abraham here. In the previous 20 years to this point, Abraham was a pretty strong guy, right? He let Lot pick where he wanted to go. He went after Lot, right? Just not very many men, and recaptured Lot and fought a battle and all the things that he did. He saw Sodom. He destroyed. He had done. Had the three men show up and was very, very open and faithful to the fact that God was telling him that he was going to have a son, even when his wife was not kind of agreeing with it or thinking it was going to go on. But when it came to Abraham's own safety, personal safety, we see where he had a weakness. Right? His cowardice here is always worried about that something bad is going to happen to him. We've seen this now in two different instances. Okay? And occasionally it caused a lapse of faith or an eclipse of faith. Again, he had enough faith in God to forsake and leave Sodom and go get Lot. But when it came to trusting God for his own personal safety, because he was worried that the beauty of his wife here was going to attract the attention of this very pagan king, he would just either kill Abraham or take him captive or do whatever he wanted to do with him. Okay? So we see that again, Abraham lying and Sarah going right along with it, and telling Abimelech that they were brother and sister. Alright, so that being said, Abimelech sees a perfectly nice woman who is single and just the sister of this man and takes her. And we saw in verse 3 that God shows up to Abimelech in a dream and goes on to tell him, essentially reveals the ruse that Abraham and Sarah had pulled over the wool over Abimelech's eyes. And we see that when he shows him to the dream and tells him that it's actually another man's wife and he shouldn't touch her or anything with her, and that if he did, that he was going to die, would be the consequence if he would do that. Abimelech asked God. Now let's remember, Abimelech is a pagan king, right? Who worships Philistines and worshiping idols and all the things that we're doing. But he asked God for mercy because he said, I didn't do anything and I didn't know. Abraham and Sarah are the ones that kind of devised this whole plan. And God told Abimelech that he would do that. He also told Abimelech that he would have Abraham pray for him because he was a prophet of God. Now, to me, this is interesting. And let me tell you why. Because Abimelech now had this vision from God and obviously understands the importance of it. And he explains to him the lie and this deception that Abraham and Sarah had just kind of done to him. And in the midst of all of this, God tells Abraham that the very guy that just lied to him and made him get into this situation to where, he could have died very easily, that he was the guy that was going to pray for him, right? Because he was a prophet of God. I think that for me, in Abimelech's situation here, would have some problems accepting the fact that Abraham, the guy that just caused me to be in this problem, is now going to be praying and interceding on my behalf. But that's what God told him. And we see some kind of interesting things that kind of happen because of that. Right? Put a verse in it. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all the things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee? That thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. So what does Abraham here find out about how much of the fear of God was actually in Gerar? What does he find out here about the fear of God that was going in the palace here? Right, they were. The king and the servants, these people, there was a very much, quite a bit, afraid of what God would do to them because of Sarah. So Abraham, who thought that he knew better than God here, right? Thought that this guy's going to kill me if he thinks this is my wife, whatever the case may be, devises his own plan, and he takes for granted and thinks that just because these people are supposed to be pagan, they have no fear of the Lord of all, they have no concept of who God is, so he comes up with his own plan. When in reality, the fear of the Lord is pretty great among Abimelech and the people that were in the house as well. The problem here was not that there was no fear of God in Gerar. The problem here is that there is a lack of faith on the part of Abraham. Right? There's the problem. The plan to tell these people that they were siblings was entirely Abraham's idea. But he tried to excuse himself for coming up with this plan to keep him from creating problems. But in turn, what it did was it actually created him more problems, right? Verse 13, in verse 12, first, yet indeed she is my sister, she is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness, which thou shalt show unto me, in every place whither we shall come, say to me, he is my brother. So we see in verse 13 that now that Abraham is having this conversation with this king, who is Abraham trying to implicate for the reason of him coming up with this plan? Exactly, right? He's implicating that God was the reason that they left his house. God was the reason that they're traveling through this land. And he said that it was kind of God's fault that he came up with this plan. Okay? The word that Abraham used there in verse 13, the word for wonder, if you get the Greek, the actual translation of it, it means to walk around with no hope and no purpose at all. Now, when God told Abraham to move, did he give him a purpose? Absolutely, right? He gave him a very specific purpose. There was reasons God told him to go in the direction that he was going in. So we see Abraham now caught in this lie, is blaming God, and then he's coming up with more and more excuses for the reasons and why he developed this lie, which could have caused Abimelech and his family and his house a whole bunch of problems, death and destruction, essentially. Abraham here is trying to get some more sympathy and maybe trying to get a little understanding out of Abimelech, right? He's trying to come up. Let's go to verse 14. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servant and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So the payment here Abimelech gives to Abraham and Sarah, more than likely here, and it was a ton of stuff. He gives him a ton of stuff. So it was most likely part of the custom of the time for having incidents like this, where there's a misunderstanding, where something goes on, and this is kind of like a payment to kind of not necessarily smooth over things, but just kind of what they did when there's this great misunderstanding. And then we see that Abraham, because of this, prays for Abimelech, and we see in verses 17 and 18 that now they are able to, he and his wives are able to have children. Now, why do you think, though, that God chose, up until this point, chose barrenness on the house as judgment for Abimelech? Why do you think that God closed up the wombs of, chose barrenness to Abimelech up to this point? We see in verse 17, Abraham prayed, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they're now able to have children. They've not been able to at this point.
So Sarah was dealing with.
Exactly, right? So it's the same thing that Sarah was dealing with. So in the midst of all this, God is teaching Abraham a lesson, right? And what's the lesson? He's making a point here. What's the point? Right, trust Him, have faith in Him, and that Abraham and Sarah both needed to place total and complete faith in God, in Him, even when uncertainties, even when dangers popped up, right? It's easy to trust God when things are going good. It's not nearly as easy in the midst of uncertainties or when problems may come. And that's the lesson here. And I'm sure that Abraham understood very quickly that now he's praying for Abimelech, and God then allows his wife to no longer be barren. And it's kind of a callback to the fact that it's the exact same thing that Abraham and Sarah were dealing with. So he's using this as a way to teach Abraham a lesson. Now, Abraham, living in a land that he did not own, made him afraid and worried. And instead of trusting in God's plan, he came up with his own plan. But we see that amidst, even in his lapsing of faith, that God delivered graciously Abraham again. Okay? Now we jump down into chapter 21. We see God rewarding Abraham's faith. Right? So we see God teaching him a lesson, delivering him graciously in the midst of his unfaithfulness. First 7 verses here of chapter 21, we see God rewarding the faith of Abraham. All right, so let's read the first house and move into Canaan. Okay, so he's been there for 25 years. And we know that early on in this 25-year journey, essentially, God had promised Abraham a son, right? Or promised him heirs very, very early on. And the holding back or the keeping of this heir for such a long time, the delaying of having Isaac essentially, was because God was testing and strengthening Abraham's faith. All right, now at 100 years old, we see this promise come to fruition. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. So now it's been 25 long years of no children, of heartache, of doubting God at times, of trying to remain faithful in the midst of probably some pretty bleak circumstances, especially as they got older. There's no way this is ever going to happen. But we see now that Abraham is being rewarded for his faithfulness, and we see us being given a son in verse 2. Now, looking at these, if we just took these 2 verses and you wanted to just use a word to describe Abraham's actions here, describe God's actions here, just read these 2 verses, we can describe God's actions as what? Faithful, right? He was faithful to Abraham. He told Abraham he was going to give him a son, and he gave him. Took some time, took some teaching, but he was faithful to what he said he was going to do. A reminder to us that God's promises never fail. God's promises never fail. It may take 25 years. Okay? It may take 40 years. Who knows? But God's promises never fail. No matter how long the fulfillment may take, we know that if God promises that something is going to happen, we can take that to the bank. We know that it's going to happen. Okay, now, verse 3, Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded. And one thing I forgot to mention, the last part of verse 2, Abraham had a son at his own age. And what does it say? What's the last part of verse 2 say? At the set time that God said it was going to happen, right? Again, this is this inserts in there. This was when God, all along, God had this plan, right? When God said this was going to happen 25 years ago, he knew that in 25 years, this was the set time that he was going to have this take place. And again, it just shows the sovereignty of God through all this. When he took Abraham out 25 years ago and showed him the stars and said, look up there, can you count those stars? And he said, no, of course not. He said, that's how many children you're going to have. That's going to be the nations coming from you. And he knew that in 25 years, this was going to be the day that Isaac would show up. So again, because Abraham and Sarah, they wavered in faith a couple times and they're kind of unsure about stuff, we see God being faithful on God's time, because that's what God does. Doesn't do things on our time, okay? And a lot of times, him not doing things on our time seems unfair to us on our level, but we need to remember that God's not fair, right? He's just and righteous. God does what he does. And we should be willing and happy to be faithful to the promises that he has given us, okay? Now, circumcision, verse 4, this was the sign of the Abrahamic covenant. Back when God told them that would be the thing. The descendants bear the mark on their bodies as a promise that God had made to Abraham. Abraham named his son Isaac here. And does anybody know what Isaac means? If you don't, that's fine. But anybody know what the name Isaac means? Laughter. It means laughter. And because Abraham here would have laughed with joy, with holy joy, when God promised him his son in his old age. And if you will, go back to chapter 17 and look at verse 17 and see actually the kind of why this was here. Verse 16 first, let's see some context here. And I will bless her and give, it's go to verse 15 so we get the context. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarah, but Sarah shall her name be, and I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she will be a mother of nations, kings of people shall be of her. And Abraham did what in verse 17? And Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said into his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear? And we see him naming Isaac now because of the laughter that took place. Laugh with holy joy here when he promised him a son. We go back to chapter 18 and we see that who else laughing in the midst of this when he was told they were going to have a son. Sarah, of course, laughed in disdain as well when that promise was made, and she kind of doubted. And no doubt, I'm sure at all, that when Isaac shows up here now, after Sarah gives birth to him, and Abraham holds him for the first time, I'm sure there was a ton of laughter as well, with joy and with just the happiness that new babies bring, especially to these people who've been wanting one for so long, they've been promised one for so long, and it takes so long for it essentially to get here. I know how laughter and happy we were when Pip showed up. I'm sure we'll be the same thing when Moxie shows up in a couple of weeks. It's just a very, very joyous occasion, which you all know that as well. So we see Isaac being named Isaac, and her laughter here. Go to look at verse 6, right? And Sarah said, God hath made me to do what? To laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. So we see Sarah, her laughing out here in just pure joy, pure ecstasy. A shining moment here, a bright shining moment here, and I'm sure this is Lane's season. I'm sure he showed up in the morning. It was a beautiful day. The sun was out. The bird chirping, the baby was crying, and Sarah was laughing. We see how kind of happy this would be. So that's how we get the name, how they come up with the name here, Isaac. Now, who would have dreamed that Sarah, at 91 years of age here, would be nursing a child and holding her own baby? Verse 7, and she said unto him, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. So you can kind of see the joyous, momentous occasion that this is. In the rapture of fulfillment, the happy parents must have forgotten quickly the many years of waiting, the many years of wanting, because if we see in this instance that God's joy is always worth waiting for. Right? God's joy is always worth waiting for. Go to Hebrews chapter 11. And look at verse 11. And as we read this, the question asks, what did Sarah conclude about God after waiting so many years for a child? Verse 11. She judged him faithful who had promised. And Sarah concluded about God here that he was faithful, that God was faithful. When we don't put our faith in God, we are essentially when we don't put our faith in God, what are we essentially saying or concluding about God? When we don't put our faith in Him, what are we saying about God? First of all, that He's not faithful. Okay, let's start there. Secondly, that He's not worthy of our faith. Right? We're just saying, first of all, that God's not faithful. It also shows that He's not worthy of our trust, of our faith. And of course, that is absolutely 100% not the case. Sarah deemed God faithful, put her faith in God, and God rewarded her faith with a son that He had promised so many years early. This account is here. We see this waiting period. We've seen this kind of happen. Now, this is here to help us strengthen our faith in God and cause us to rejoice in His perfect faithfulness. You all each probably have instances, I know that most of you do, which you can say, yeah, I prayed for something, I was faithful to God, it took a long, long time, and He came through, because He always does. And it's just another reminder for us that even in the desolate times, even in the times where things are super uncertain, it's important for us to make sure that we are staying faithful to God. All right, chapter 21, verse 8 starts with another set, the threefold set of tests here that work our way through the rest of the chapter that Abraham has to deal with. And we might expect God's dealings with Abraham here to end. Now, so he's given him the son, right? He's already shown him the land. He's already kind of fulfilled the Abrahamic covenant. This is the last fulfillment of it presently. So you think maybe God kind of deals, this is the ending with the dealing of Abraham with the birth of the son Isaac. But that's not the case. God continues to test Abraham's faith. And he does so by using both of Abraham's sons, right? So this has been a while now that go back and went to the instance in which Sarah sends Hagar in to Abraham and thinks that she can secure the line in that way. And Ishmael is born. And we see, Ishmael's that's jealousy and stuff that happens, that pops up when Ishmael is first born, and some of the stuff that happens with Sarah. And we don't really hear much else about Ishmael. He's still there. He's still around. We just don't hear much else about him, some of the other stuff that's going on. As a matter of fact, now Ishmael at this point is about 13, 14, 15 years old. Is how old he is when Isaac shows up. Now, Ishmael's been the only son, right, for 13 or 14 years now. And all of a sudden there's this brand new baby that comes in. And Ishmael is kind of just half Abraham's, not Sarah's at all, so just a half brother. But he's kind of been the guy that's probably running around with Abraham, doing the stuff, helping the fields, putting the oxen together, hunting, and doing all the stuff that, that I'm sure was going on at this time. He's kind of being, we don't see much about it, but I'm sure that there's been a bit of a twinkle in Abraham's eye when Ishmael was there. Of course, it's his first son. Of course, that's the case. Now there's a new baby that just popped up. And just watching Pippa with Haley's belly increasingly get larger and larger. And her understanding now there's a baby in there. She gets that. And already some of the things that she's kind of, when Pippa's sitting on Haley's lap and Moxie kicks, and you can see her kind of kick at her, Pippa doesn't like her. And she knows that there's something going on there. I kind of imagine that when the baby shows up in a few weeks that, Haley's gonna have a lot of focus on the new baby. Pippa's, been the only one now for 18, 19, 20 months. There's gonna be a period there of some jealousy. And you all had multiple kids, you all know that, right? You've seen that kind of same thing take place. We see that happen here as well, with Isaac and Ishmael. We're not going to get into this test of faith because we don't have time today. I want to spend lots of time talking about it. But the new baby's there, and Ishmael doesn't like it. He's doing some stuff to kind of act out, as kids do, even older kids. And there's a test of Abraham's faith here that happens. And that is where we'll start at when we get into verse 8 next week. We have the Ishmael test, and then we have the Isaac test as well. We have some lessons and stuff we're going to kind of look at, kind of show you where we're getting into. We know the Isaac test very well and some of the stuff that's going on. So we'll jump into that more next week. But Abraham is 101 years old. He had got a brand new baby. He is the covenant that God has given him has come to fulfillment. We've seen tests now all the way through, and we think that at 100 years old, Abraham's been pretty faithful for quite some time now. Maybe God is kind of easing back a little bit, and that's not the case at all. He just continues to test Abraham's faith, to purify his relationship. Okay, and at 30, knowing that I'm going to have plenty of tests the rest of my life, that God is going to continue to help purify my faith. Some of you all that at an older age, you have been in this thing now for quite some time, it doesn't give you a reprieve from the testing of God. He continues to want to make you a better version in your relationship with Him, right? Because the goal here is perfection, right? And we can't do that, right? So there's always room for improvement, and God's always going to be working to get us there, closer and closer there. That's kind of what we're going to be seeing more of here with Abraham. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the lesson we had today, and for the lack of faith we saw in Abraham, and how you dealt with it. Again, the showing your faith as well with Abraham, and being patient and waiting, and the joyous occasion that it was when Isaac finally showed up as well, for both Abraham and Sarah. faithful to Him. And it's a reminder for us, Lord, that we need to be continually faithful to You as well. Trusting always, not just in the good but the bad and the ugly, to make sure that all those things that happen in our lives are just another way of drawing us closer to You, because You want as intimate as a relationship as possible with us. So Lord, I pray that when we see those things coming in our lives, Lord, we're in the middle of them a lot of times and completely unaware of the circumstances or the outcome, Lord, it's important for us to take a step back, to realize that this is here for our good, for our betterment, and for our maturity. So I pray that's a reminder for us as well as we continue with these things. I pray for Pastor Rob too as he comes in the next few minutes, Lord,